All right, hey, welcome to Behind the Pulpit for June the 26th, 2023. Man, you know what, Tim? Every time I watch that introduction video, I just want to dance around, and it makes me think, I think I've said this before, it makes me think a little bit about Three's Company. Just kind of like the, bobbing back and forth and everything like that.
I'm glad you like it.
I do like it. But by the way, we do need to probably update some of those images since we got the new studio space and all of that.
I'll be season 2.
Okay, sounds good. Season 2. Well, hey, anyway, my name's Bob Erbig. So glad you're here. My companion, my co-pastor, partner in crime, Dave Henschel, is not with us for the summer because he's on sabbatical. So make sure you're praying for he and his family in the graphic. I kind of felt bad. We rebranded this Behind the Pulpit, and Dave's images are all over there, and it was right before he left. So literally, I think he was on here for like one of the Behind the Pulpit things, but. Come September, I guess that'll be season 2, right? We'll do the summer season 1.
Season 2.
There you go. All right. Well, anyway, I am joined. But the great thing is that we've had some guests coming in with us over the last couple weeks, and today is no exception. If you were here yesterday, you may have heard my one guest, and then I also have another guest who are going to introduce themselves right now. How's it going, guys?
Hey. Good. How are you?
All right, I'm doing well. Tell me how you're doing and who you are for those out there that might not know you.
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you. My name is Laura Prothero. I am an intern this summer at Millington. I'm a college student. I go to Wheaton College. Go Thunder.
Wheaton College. Is that the theme? That's the mascot is
yeah,
Thunder?
Roll Thunder.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like if the mascot's on the field, what do they look like? Is
okay,
it just
you don't see them, you just hear
them. Did they just go
Well, we have a mastodon. That's our mascot. It's like a
the
big,
dog?
No, it's like a
I'm thinking of a mastiff.
Mastiff.
That's the dog. By the way, if you haven't
a woolly mammoth, is that what it is?
Side thing, mastiff is a enormous dog. I've seen a few of them. They're huge. They're like horses. They're that big. Anyway, okay, back
but
to
the
Wheaton.
thunder is like the big, like we have like a thunder as like the picture. And then our actual mascot is the mastodon.
So what's it? Is it a lightning bolt or what's
no? It's like a thunder cloud.
Oh, a thunder cloud.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we say roll thunder. Yeah.
I caught that.
Yeah.
Is that how you say it too? Roll thunder.
That will be the theme for this. Roll thunder.
I like
roll
that.
thunder.
That's good.
All right. Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, since you stole the thunder, we'll go to the other one. There we go.
Perfect.
I'm Clint Watkins. I grew up here at NBC. My college mascot was much more lame. We were the Mules.
Oh.
The Muhlenberg Mules.
Was it really the Mules?
Yeah, back in the day they were the Cardinals, but then for some reason someone was like, "Hey, we should be the Mules."
Oh man.
So
I think I've told you I almost went to Muhlenberg.
Really?
Like I looked at because they had a theater program. I was interested in doing that. So they were on my list, but I didn't get in because I didn't apply like early decision, I think, and so they prioritized those people. So I went to Eastern, and they were the Eagles, which your wife went to Eastern, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we're talking about all the colleges now.
Nice.
So we got the Thunder, we got the Eagles, and we got the Mules.
The Mules. Yep, the Mules. But yeah, I'm a world partner of Millington, and born and raised here. Went off to Muhlenberg. And became a missionary with Disciple Makers.
Nice.
So
nice. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the podcast. But we're glad that Laura and Clint are here with us today. And so, if you've watched any of our podcasts, you know that what we kind of do is we do a little bit of an opening here, and then we move on to talk about what's going on in the life of our church. And so, I'd like to do that now. And Laura's here. So Laura's mentioned she's doing this internship, and I thought as part of the body life, the announcements, you can share with people a little bit about what you're doing for your internship and what God's doing in the midst of that. So why don't you take the mic and roll thunder?
Yeah, thank you. I've been doing a lot of different things, which has been cool. I've been able to shadow different people on the ministry leadership team. I've worked a little bit with Bob as well as with Noah on some projects. I'm currently an English major. Could be changing soon, but I'm doing some editing of Bob is putting out some ebooks for using sermons and putting them into books, and I've been going through those and helping Noah format them and just doing some editing, so that's been good.
How's Bob's grammar?
It's pretty solid. I think
Were you English?
We're working on it. Well, so yeah, okay. So another fun fact. So I was an English literature major in undergrad, English literature and theater. Although if I did it over again, I often say I would do English writing because there was a little bit more of a creative writing component to that. But what are you thinking about changing to?
Well, I was thinking, so career-wise.
Oh, your mom's an English teacher too, right?
She is.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
And I
Is she trying to keep you in the English field, or?
I guess, yeah. Kind of raised that way, My
Sorry,
dad's an engineer,
Ruth.
actually, so he wanted me to be an engineer, but that wasn't going to happen.
Well, okay. Those are like diametrically
I know.
opposed,
It's
all right?
crazy. But I was thinking I might want to get my master's to be a speech therapist.
Okay.
Speech pathology.
Oh, all right.
Unfortunately, Wheaton doesn't have a program for that for undergrad or a master's degree, so I would kind of just have to study whatever is closest.
Okay.
And then hope I get into grad school.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm sure you'll get into grad school.
Thank you. So it's just
from working with you, you're going to be a great candidate for graduate school.
Appreciate it. But it's just like it's hard to know what to study when I don't have a whole lot of options.
Yeah.
Because Wheaton is a great school, but pretty limited.
But maybe not for speech pathology.
No.
Okay.
It's great in other ways.
One of the schools I'm at, speech pathology, is a pretty big master's level program for undergrad and grad school.
Which one's that?
Lebanon Valley College.
Okay.
Nice.
We have a really great ministry there.
I want to move out to Pennsylvania. I don't know about that.
So you could live in Chicago or the Lebanon Valley.
Oh man, hard choice.
Speaking of, before we came on, we were talking a little bit about the area where Clint is from. Lancaster.
Well, I'm from here.
Well, currently.
I currently live in Lancaster.
Okay, all right.
I'm a Jersey boy.
And Laura's got a relative in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Pastor
and
Bob's having a hard time pronouncing it.
I'm trying. Yeah. Well, no. I mean, I grew up. I was born in Pennsylvania, but my wife and I were married in Southern California, and she is from Palmdale, California, but their sister city is Lancaster, California. So we were having a bit of an argument before, or at least thought we'd stir it up for any of you Pennsylvania people that are watching right now.
Well, and if you show up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and you say Lancaster, you automatically have a target on your back as they're not from here.
Where are you from? Why are you here?
Yeah, you're saying it wrong.
I gotcha. All right. So what else? Anything else about the internship you want to share? Like, I know you learned a bit from Mark. He showed you a bit about web design, things like that.
So the focus has been in the communications department. So I've been working a lot like on the web page and different like promotional aspects of the job. So there's a lot of like social media is a big thing that I've been working on. Like editing graphics, just a lot of like, we have a lot of events this summer coming up, and we have to promote them and also make graphics so that we do. That's just part of life nowadays. We gotta make things look good and enticing and all of that. And Laura's been doing a great job. So thanks so much for stepping in and using your skills to help us be better here at Millington. I want to talk about a couple things that are coming up in the life of the church. So just so you know, if you're watching this and you missed any of the announcements, and I know there's still going to be some people that when they come to church this coming Sunday are going to be showing up at an earlier time or a later time and wondering what happened. But we are doing a one service, and I think, speaking of graphics, I think Tim does have a few graphics for what I'm mentioning. There it is, combined worship service plus Summer Connections barbecue, which actually is going to be more like a picnic. There is one service this coming week at 10 a.m., and it's going to be outside under the tent. Rain or shine. We've done it under the tent before, even when it was raining. We're going to be starting a spiritual warfare series, which I'll get to in just a moment. But just a reminder, there's going to be no live stream, no kids. There's going to be food, so it's really a one family service. And if you want to come to it, you got to come in person, be outside. You can bring your lawn chairs. We're going to have some chairs. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we hope to see you this week, 10 a.m. for the combined worship service. And then we are kicking off our new sermon series called SWAT, Spiritual Warfare and Tactics. Man, I really want one of those helmets, Tim. I'm going to put you, Tim, go get me one of those helmets for this week. That's going to be
Clint,
really
back in the day when you were practicing your SWAT skills, did you have a helmet like that?
I did. We did tell Clint that we had to
wish.
talk a little bit about his famous SWAT story here at MBC. For those of you that haven't been around for a long time, Clint famously did some swatting himself. What was that story?
Well, I mean, how much time do we have? Because it's a pretty in-depth story.
Okay, well, can you do it in 90 seconds?
Okay, I'll
Can
try.
you get the high level?
High level. We lived on what's the house here on the corner? One Crest.
One Crest.
We lived in Crest. My parents were gone for the weekend. Me and my buddies were playing with airsoft guns. I thought, let's go over to the church and continue this game
With airsoft guns.
with airsoft guns.
Okay.
Didn't know that there was choir practice and childcare going on in this building, and we had the lights off.
This was the current kids area and the
Yeah.
preschool. All right.
Yep. So we're running around playing capture the flag in the dark with airsoft guns, and I forget who it was, but they were coming over to the building with the kids, and they just see a bunch of grown men with guns running around in the dark.
So there was kids coming over to the building.
It was either one of the childcare workers or they were planning to bring them to the Yeah.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, and that's why, just to be sensitive, it was very traumatic for them. I mean, they had to basically do like a lockdown drill.
Okay.
While the three surrounding townships of police got called, they locked down.
Three surrounding townships?
Yep.
There was
And they
three
got-
different police forces that came.
Yeah. They shut down the block, and then they snuck in without us knowing and took us all down one by one, handcuffed each of us. I got knocked down. This was my SWAT experience. I got knocked down to the floor by someone holding a riot shield. Yeah.
Oh, my. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
SWAT.
And we laugh about it now. It was not a laughing matter.
I imagine it was
11
pretty
years
traumatic
ago.
for you in the moment. And you
yeah.
were like, it's just an airsoft
Yeah,
gun.
and thankfully they knew. And here's probably the
So they saw the orange tip at
saw
the end and they
orange
realized,
tips.
oh,
But my
okay.
best friend at the time, he's Muslim, and he saw the cops coming in, and he ran away screaming in Arabic, like an Arabic prayer, which that could have just been a devastating tragedy, you know? So by God's grace,
Wow.
the police officers knew that we were
Wow.
just a bunch of kids playing with toy guns. But yeah, it was...
That was.
And then
that
I
was
went off
quite
to
the
college.
moment. And
Then I went off to college.
Then you went to mule. You became a mule.
Became a mule. Yep. So
Oh, my
thankfully we can
goodness.
laugh about it now.
All right.
But that was my
Wow.
SWAT experience.
Wow, that's quite the story. That's quite the story. So that's not the type of SWAT we're doing this summer. We're going to be talking about the spiritual forces in the heavenly realms. But that is our. Thank you for sharing that, Clint. That's our first sermon series this summer, and then we're going to do a series on the Psalms at the second half. Last thing I want to mention. This dropped last week. Dave and I recorded a short series, podcast series called "The 10 Commandments of Progressive Christianity," based on this book by Michael Kruger, who's the president of Reformed Theological Seminary in Charlotte, and he walks through these different elements of progressive Christianity, which we talked a lot about the half-truths that are in there, and as it relates to key doctrines. So I think it's really worth your while. These are probably things you've heard but haven't really thought of before. The first one dropped, and we haven't even promoted it, and it's been like one of our highest viewed videos. So we think that people are really interested in this series. If you are watching this on the email you got today, there should be a secondary link to the first video down below. And they're short videos. They're going to be like 5-7 minutes. There's going to be 10 of them that are going to be dropping each week. So if you're missing Dave over the summer, you can see a little bit of Dave week by week on the YouTube channel. Were you raising your hands and you want to say something?
No.
Oh, I thought you were going to jump in and say, I'm making a graphic and it's going to look great.
I
For
wish.
the 10 Commandments of Progressive Christianity. And of course, you can watch it on the YouTube channel. All right, so those are the things that are coming up. We're going to shift now to an exciting segment we've added to Behind the Pulpit, and we call it In the News. And I think Tim actually made a Whoa.
Wow.
That is awesome.
Good job,
Tell me they heard that the music behind that.
The music was they will be able to.
It was heard.
It was heard.
Oh my goodness. Well, hopefully you hung on this long and you got to see that graphic. All right, so here's what I've been doing for the last couple weeks. I've been picking out different news topics. This week, there was a lot in the news, and probably next week, the Supreme Court stuff is going to drop at the end of June here, so there might be some stuff to talk about there. But a couple crazy things that have been happening in the news. I'm going to bring this up and see what you guys want to talk about. And if you don't want to talk about it, I'll talk about it because I find them interesting. First one. Do I need to wait for you to get back over there so they can see the... well, I wanted them to see the images. Okay. All right. So the first one, this one like really threw me... And tell me if you guys are paying attention to this. This Titan submersible story over the last week. Were you paying attention at all? No?
Just a little bit.
All right. So here it is. Titan submersible. First of all, this group called Ocean Gate made this like mini sub, and they were taking this thing down to the bottom of the ocean to see the Titanic crash, like the Titanic remnants at the bottom of the, like 19,000, 20,000 feet down. And I was just thinking about, I mean, this is a really tragic story from this week, but I was looking at this thinking, I would never get in this. Like, if you actually watch the images, it's like it's a teeny tiny thing, and you're going like miles and miles down under the ocean. So this was like their little submersible. They went down there. And the guy, here's the other thing that was crazy. The guy who like runs the company was saying that the way they put this thing together, the way they actually, and I think this is true, the way they actually steered it was basically they rigged up like an Xbox controller, and that was how they were able to steer this thing. So
I would have done great at steering it there.
You probably would. I mean, speaking your SWAT story,
SWAT and video
if
games.
anything. But the tragedy, of course, was that this sub imploded down at the bottom of the ocean, and apparently the Navy knew it and didn't tell people, and people were searching for 5 days, thinking people were alive down there, and we got to find them before the air runs out, and it ended with everybody. The 5 people on the sub died. So I had an image for the 5 people that were on there. There was a billionaire guy. There was a guy and his son. Really, really tragic. And so what I wanted to talk a little bit about from a Christian perspective is, I was thinking about this, the idea of risk. What's the appropriate idea of risk? And then just talking about the tragedy that happened here, that we should lament when there's a loss of life. So 5 people lost their lives as a result of this expedition that went down there. And I thought this week, like, kind of for what? Like what should we risk? We talked a little bit about this in the Ecclesiastes series. Dave did a sermon on the appropriate use of risk in the Christian life, and this just seems like total, I don't know if voyeurism is the right word, but just people going down to do this exotic transportation, and they wind up losing their lives. Did you say you wanted to say something about the risk piece of this, or?
I mean, I'd be curious to hear where you're going.
I think like there's things to risk for, and then there's things that's when we risk. I think that it's just for what? Just to say I did this. I went down and saw this wreckage, which there was only like a little teeny porthole in there, so I'm not sure how much of that they would have actually seen if they went down there. But there's risks. See, these are the 5 folks that passed away on this transportation down there.
So it was more like recreational exhibition.
It was yes, good word. Recreational. I think they paid like $250,000 to get in this little thing and go down just to see the wreckage of the Titanic, and now they've passed away.
So are these like not trained people?
I think they were trained to some extent, but they weren't like. I heard people talking about it later on that they were not like anybody that's done this stuff, there would have been other protocols they would have gone through. Okay. So it seemed a bit foolish in terms of what they did. So anyway, that was one thing that happened this week. That was a bit crazy to me. The second thing was I've been reading I was hearing some stuff this week. This has been going on for a little while, but the U.S. is talking about doing a central bank digital currency, which I don't know, Clint. You were talking about generosity yesterday, and the crazy thing about this is that some people were talking about, you can open up a bank with the government and it's very easy to put money in, but can they take money out and can they force you to spend things, which kind of sounds a bit end times-ish in terms of what's going on. So I'm not like an expert on digital currency, but that's going on in the news right now. And then the last thing I heard about just today was the Russian coup that apparently this is crazy. So the war in Ukraine's going on, and there was a group of like 20,000 mercenaries that were going to march on Moscow and try to overthrow like the Russian government, and they apparently just struck a peace deal right now. Which we've been praying for the end of the war in Ukraine, but this just seems kind of crazy to me as well. Man. That's what's going on in the news, like just craziness in our world. It's always it's going all over the place. So that's the news for this week, and we'll see what we have next week. Where's the graphic? I just hear the music. There it is. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So let's finish up our segment here. We're going to move on kind of the main discussion point, and that is the sermon series from this last week. We finished up and I should have a graphic for this, that we finished up our series through Philippians that we were calling Choose Joy. Joy that endures the storm. Clint finished up the series this week by giving us a really challenging message about missions and generosity and what that looks like. So, Clint, maybe could you just highlight that, and then I'd like to hear a bit more about your own ministry for the podcast.
Sure. And I also feel like it needs to be mentioned that you guys didn't select me to preach that passage. Like I mentioned my availability. Before you guys had even chosen
was that
series.
the case? They've set up the preaching, so I didn't know. Okay.
Because people are like, oh, of course, like bring in the missionary to talk about missional
of course,
giving. Yeah,
of course,
figures.
the missionary.
But it just so happened, coincidence.
Right.
Like Dave wasn't like, while I'm gone, let's have a missionary come talk about generosity. I just said, hey, I'm available at the end of June. It just so happened that we were finishing up Philippians. But yeah, the main idea from yesterday was that we're supplied by God's means to give to God's mission. And that's what's
very pithy.
Yeah, well, I try to make it memorable.
I know. That's actually going to be. We've been doing these memes. I'm going to make sure Noah does that meme of you talking about that. It's going to go on social media. Laura, there you go.
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, and actually, Philippians 4 has always been, ever since I became a missionary, it's been one of the key passages for us as we raise funds because of Paul's perspective. Particularly verse 17, he says, "I'm not seeking the gift, but I'm seeking the fruit that increases to your credit." Like that's been our perspective as people who fundraise, that it helps our needs, it helps to meet our needs, but that's not why we fundraise because of the fruit of the gospel that's coming, and it gets credited to people who give to our ministry. So honestly, I was pumped when I realized, I get to preach on Philippians 4 at my sending church. So it's
gonna be a little intimidating.
A little bit, but that's why I tried to.
But appropriately challenging. I think people need to be challenged to give, because sometimes people don't think about it that much.
And I hope that it did challenge some people. But I think my intent was also to encourage the church as a whole and individuals that your giving is doing something.
It's a partnership in terms of what you're doing. So maybe you're not called to go out on the field, but God has given you resources within the economy of His kingdom to help fuel His kingdom work, which I thought you did a great job of drawing out from that passage.
Yeah, and it is, as I think about the whole context of Philippians, just the partnership that he had with the church, the partnership that we've had with Millington, and the ways that Paul really challenges the Philippians to live as gospel citizens. And part of that is how we use our resources for the sake of the kingdom. So it was exciting to be able to preach that. And
I think so. I liked your observation that the letter can read a bit like a news update. Like, this is what's going on, and then, by the way, you need to give for that ministry. So that was a really intriguing observation, especially as we kind of were closing out the series. Paul's mentioning all these deep theological truths. He's praying for people that are his spiritual children, telling them how to do ministry, and then reminding them that ministry does cost money in terms of what you're doing if things are going to happen. So,
and Romans is similar too. Because at the end of Romans, he's like, "Hey, by the way, I'm stopping by so you can send me to Spain." Romans is also as theologically rich as it is. It's also a ministry newsletter.
It ends with, "Oh, by the way, I'm coming to you, and I need you to fund my trip to Spain."
Right.
So start saving up now.
So it's encouraged me to just write really, really long theological newsletters.
Yes. There you go.
That's what people want. And
praise God, from whom all blessings flow. That's awesome. Hey, Clint, by the way, we do have this thing called Behind the Pulpit Questions, and there was a question that came in for you. Okay, so buckle up for this one. All right, and then we'll talk about your ministry a bit. So the question that came in is, what is Clint's go-to Wawa sub?
Oh, my goodness.
Since we heard your name was Watkins or something, apparently you were there quite a bit.
Wow. I want to know who asked that question, because...
That would be me. I answered the question in the...
he was. That's what he was thinking yesterday.
So I have a question for you. Do you want to go to Wawa after this?
We do have more Wawas in the area
Jersey
now.
Mike's is closer.
Ooh. So I have two go-to Wawa subs, and I rotate. First is just an Italian. Italian sub.
Amen.
Or I get the chicken tender sub.
Oh, man. Those both sound delicious.
They're really good.
That's awesome. Awesome.
I was expecting a deeper question than that, but that's more of a question that stirs my soul.
My deeper question now is, too, so you Give us, for those of people that don't know you didn't get a chance to talk super in depth about your ministry. Why don't you share a little bit about the work of Disciple Makers, what you're doing, and then Clint, you might not know, Clint is actually an author. He's about to publish a book on his life experience. So maybe you can share a little bit about that, and we can, speaking of going deep and heavy, we can talk about that.
Sure.
Coming out of the Wawa sub question.
So Disciple Makers first?
Yeah, we'll do Disciple Makers first.
Yeah, so
what is it? What do you do? What's the ministry that we're supporting?
So Disciple Makers is a campus ministry. So we work with college students.
Laura, maybe that's where God's calling you. There you go.
Possibly.
And it's a ministry that God used to turn my life around. So even though I grew up here, heard the gospel, I was on my way away from Jesus. I went to Muhlenberg because I wanted to go to a secular school and not go into ministry. But Disciple Makers, our emphasis is deep relational investment and getting students into the scriptures and helping them understand the gospel. And so for me, it meant people were really persistent in pursuing me, getting to know me, speaking the truth in grace, opening up the scriptures with me. And I had experienced such radical transformation in school. Those guys who I went to Wawa with, they would differentiate between old Clint and new Clint.
Interesting.
Because of that transformation that happened through Jesus Christ and the Spirit. And so by the time I got to the end of college and I was thinking about what do I want to do with my life, that the college age is such a pivotal time. Not only you're experiencing right now, all these life transitions, but it's also such a strategic time and place to reach people for the sake of the kingdom, because they're going all over the world. And so Disciple Makers, it was a no-brainer for me, because it was, for me, an opportunity to invest in particularly younger men, but young men and women for the sake of the gospel. And that's what we do. We disciple students. We reach the campus with the gospel, and we hope that it's a sending place, sending Disciple Makers into the world afterwards.
Very cool.
That's amazing.
That's very cool. So secondarily, well, actually, did you mention specifically what your role is in the midst of that?
No, so we're in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm the team leader of the Lancaster team, and we're at 3 different schools in Lancaster. So Lebanon Valley College, which has a great speech pathology program.
We heard about the Lebanon Valley before. Yes.
Elizabethtown College, and then Thaddeus Stevens College, third school, and that's a tech school. So it's a 2-year trade school, which is a different context for college ministry, but I love doing ministry there. So those are the 3 campuses that we're at as a team, and I oversee our team. So I'm not only discipling students, teaching and preaching, but also training our staff and leading our team so that we can do that effectively.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
And now, is your wife on staff with you, or she supports you, or did they do like couple sending, or how does the ministry work?
It's kind of both. So I'm the employee, so I'm the one who works for the ministry. She helps out in really significant ways, but she's not on campus as much right now. She's at home with her son Conley. But she's had really significant roles ever since we joined in various ways, either on campus, discipling girls, or even at the ministry-wide level, helping to improve our organization, writing up policies. So she's amazing. Well,
yeah, Jillian's really great. We always miss her when you don't bring her with you. The
beast without the beauty. Who wants that?
Well, you said it, not me. So speaking of your family, Clint's, we were talking about this before. Clint's writing a book. It's about to be published. And we didn't really plan on doing this when you first came on here, but I think it's worth mentioning a little bit about your story and what you're doing in the book and where people can get it and hear a bit more about you.
Yeah. So back in 2018, we lost our firstborn son, Eli. He had a fatal condition that we learned about. We learned the diagnosis when he was still in the womb, about halfway through the pregnancy, and his condition meant that his brain and scalp and skull didn't fully develop, but he would continue growing in the womb, but wouldn't survive after delivery. And so for us, it was just a season of intense turmoil and distress and sadness and sorrow and grief. Honestly, that continues to this day. Just even talking about our family, like Conley he's a little brother, even though his older brother's not here.
Right.
So through that experience, the thing that helped us was Scripture's invitation to lament. So the book of Lamentations, the book of Job, Jesus weeping in the garden, the fact that a third of the Psalms are lament Psalms. And that's what helped us hold on to faith and cling to hope, to be honest with the Lord and not feel like we had to sugarcoat things or find the lesson or the silver lining. And one of the things that I did as part of being Eli's dad was I blogged through our experience and shared his story, and just kept getting nudged by people to keep writing and to keep sharing. And so it led to this book that's coming out, and the book is called Just Be Honest: How to Worship Through Tears and Pray Without Pretending.
Look at that. Look at that. Wow. That's a great cover, man.
I wish I could
Yeah,
claim
great.
that I designed it. That was my publisher.
So you need extra editing? Laura can edit your book if you want.
I always need extra editing. So, yeah. So
so where can people get the book? If they
so
wanna buy it?
it's
and
on
when's it coming out?
It'll come out in January, but it's available for pre-order right now. So it's at thegoodbook.com, and it's called
Just there, or is it on Amazon too?
I think it's just on the website right now, but it'll be on Amazon.
Okay.
I should know that. I'm the author, aren't I?
Right.
Well,
But I'm just the author. I don't do the marketing.
I didn't mean it like that. But the point of the book is to help sufferers find hope through honesty, because there's so much pressure to feel like we have to hold it together, that we just have to be calm and composed and positive. And the scriptures give us a lot of freedom to be honest with the Lord and with others.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I haven't read the book yet, although Clint said he's going to get me a copy, so hopefully I'll read it at some point.
It is on Amazon too.
But I think if you're somebody who's walked through deep pain and suffering, just the way you're describing the book and knowing your story, I think this could be really helpful to folks. And folks know, my wife and I have been pretty honest about things that we walk through, so we didn't... well, I shouldn't say that. We had our first child, then we did go through a season of several miscarriages, which is painful, and they were early. So I can't imagine the pain of knowing what's going to happen and then carrying the baby to term and then experiencing that. That's really, really deep and painful. We did though have a child who was born with significant special needs. We thought the first day that he was not going to make it either. And actually, I will tell you, knowing your story, it was in my mind, I was thinking, man, I got to talk to Clint about this, because it was kind of crazy. And God's been gracious, and He's doing great things in our son's life up to this point. And that's kind of a bit of a different story, but there's pain involved. And I think the church doesn't like to talk about that. They just like to think it's okay, right? Like they want to pray for you, and we're going to get past this, and it's going to be okay. But it's a lifetime of dealing with that. I like the fact that you mentioned, hey, that was something that happened, but we still feel kind of the shrapnel of that in our lives. And what is God teaching me, and how do I process that? And giving yourself permission to do that, which sounds like what you're going to cover in the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for the situations where you don't know the reason, we trust the one who does know the reason, but that doesn't mean that we're going to have it all wrapped up here. Yeah. And even with your guys' story, it's a chronic situation.
Right, which is different,
But it's still, I'm sure you still feel the pressure sometimes to want to wrap it up, but like it's messy. It lasts a long time.
Yes. It's a daily thing, and God teaches us different things, and we go through seasons too. Like there's seasons that are better than others, and then there's something else that comes up, or there's an emotional thing that gets caused. So I'm excited to pick this up and read it, and I'm going to tell my wife about it, because she's going to be excited about it too.
Awesome.
All right. So thank you for being. People will tell me this often. They will say thank you for being generous with what God is teaching you in your life, and I will say the same thing to you. Thank you for being generous enough to put all that in print and share, and I think a lot of people will really benefit from that. So
thanks, Bob.
Pick up the book, The Good Book Company. Just Be Honest, right?
Just Be Honest.
Clint, do you put your middle initial in there?
No.
Clint's something Watkins, just Clint Watkins. All right, so support him that way. All right, Clint, thanks so much for being here. We're glad that you're sharing a bit about that. If people want to connect with you, you can go to our missions section of the website, which was redone. By the way, we're going to have a new missions kiosk or screen or whatever we're going to call it down here in Fellowship Hall. You can learn more about their ministry. Doing good work out there in the Lebanon Valley. So thanks for bringing it here today. All right, Tim, I think we're at the end. Why don't we jump onto the theology sprint? And, if I can't, so here's what we're going to do. You give me the theology sprint, and then I'll let Clint critique my answer to this. Yeah, and Laura can do the editing. So, next time, why don't you do that again, and you can cut it down right here. If those of you that aren't paying it, that don't know this, what Tim gives me a question a theological question and I try to answer it in 60 seconds or less, I don't know the question ahead of time. So I think I've done okay the first couple weeks, but we'll see.
I think so.
We'll see.
So little groundbreaking news in the realm of Theology Sprint. I was scheming a little bit with Laura last week, and I think those our listeners remember. I believe on the podcast I mentioned I was going to use artificial intelligence to give Bob a question this week. So I hung out with my friend ChatGPT.
It's just ChatGPT.
Yes,
okay.
And
to define artificial intelligence, so there's strong and there's weak artificial intelligence.
Well, whatever this is, came up with 3 questions for you. So I got to figure out which one I want to pick.
Okay. Praying in the spirit right now.
All right. There's one on sovereignty. There's one that faith and God's goodness. Which one sounds more?
Well, those things are all kind of wrapped up together. So why don't you just? We'll do the faith and God's goodness.
All right. Well, that was 2 of them, but
there's 2 different ones. All right. Let's do God's goodness then.
Okay. Here's what ChatGPT has for you, Pastor Bob. How does the concept of God's goodness and omnipotence reconcile with the existence of evil and suffering in the world?
Ouch.
Well, that's a large topic for 60 seconds, Tim. And there's a.
This isn't me. This is ChatGPT.
Yeah,
You
no,
can't blame
I
it on
get
Tim
it.
this
I get
time.
it. So
Do you need me to repeat it?
No, I got the general gist of it here. So let me try to answer it this way. So there's a few different views about how you handle God's goodness and evil and suffering in the world. And I do think it ties in with God's sovereignty. If you do believe that God is sovereign, when we encounter suffering and the problem of evil, I do think a lot of times God uses that for our good and for shaping us. Because a lot of times we think that when evil and suffering comes into our lives, it's God punishing us. And in a lot of ways, it's not. It's just the fact that we live in a post-fall world, and evil and suffering are just part of life. And God uses those things for our good. Now, there is obviously grotesque evil and suffering that happens that should never happen, but God still works in the midst of that, and it does grieve him when those things happen.
Thank you, Bob.
So, all right, so that's the short answer. All right, Clint, why don't you critique me on that? I mean, it's probably part of your book, and I'm sure you thought a lot about this.
I think it wrapped in nicely the question that we ended up picking.
Yeah.
I mean, well done. That's
Yeah.
people have written like
Well, I
hundreds
think,
of pages.
here's my
it's too
thing
hard
to
to answer that in 60 seconds.
Some people try to do this. Like, I think in answering this question, sometimes people answer it in such a way that they want to get God off of the hook. Like, God is evil if he allows these things. And God doesn't need to be defended. God is sovereign. God is in charge of the world, So you can either choose to be angry at God. This is my thing. You can either choose to be angry at him, or you can choose to trust him when those things happen in the world. And we should, yes, fight against evil and injustice and suffering as much as we can. But we shouldn't, the goal should not be that we don't suffer. I think the scripture promises that we will.
Yeah.
So
when actually, I don't cover this topic in my book, but more so, here's how to wrestle with the Lord, even when you do on paper trust him.
Right.
But you're like, but I don't see what you're doing here.
Yes.
I mean, that's what, Jesus cried out from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? So even an intellectual answer that we believe in doesn't always bring any comfort when you're actually going through something.
Yes.
That's where lament comes in.
Well,
but
I think that's the
shameless
thing, though.
plug in my book.
I forget what I was reading recently, or who said this recently, but I'm actually doing a biblical counseling course right now, and they were talking a little bit about when those things come into your life. I think the point is that God wants you to wrestle with him as he's shaping you into who he's calling you to be. Mm-hmm. So it is God's crucible that he uses to form us. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even as we can also affirm that evil is a very bad thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Clint, Laura, thanks so much for being here. On that happy note, we will end today. Thanks for that question,
Thanks,
Tim.
Chat.
All right.
Appreciate it, ChatGPT.
So, ChatGPT.
ChatGPT will be back next week.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. All right. So thanks so much for joining us today on Behind the Pulpit. We will see you next week, hopefully back at the 12:30 hour if you want to watch us live, or if you're watching later on. God bless you.